Well, the White House started its influencer briefings this week. I think we're 2 influencer briefings in. There have been, there was one on Monday, one on Tuesday. We'll see where they go going forward. Now, there are some moments from these briefings that are going massively viral because they are cringe-inducing, painful, and nobody is wrong to cringe at them. My very unpopular take is that the moments that aren't going viral have actually not been that bad. So before I make my very unpopular argument and do battle with Ryan and Saagar, let's roll. I don't even want to do it. Let's roll this clip, C1, of the influencer briefing at the White House with Caroline Leavitt.
Over the first 100 days, the majority of policies that we've seen from the Trump administration have been either targeted at foreign affairs, such as bringing the American hostages home or attempting to end the war between Ukraine and Russia, or on long-term goals such as cutting government spending with DOGE. What policies can we expect to see rolled out over the next few months that Americans will directly feel the effects of in order to secure the 2026 midterms for the Republican Party and keep his approval rating historically high?
In the first 100 days is that the White House is crawling with kids. You have a young, beautiful baby boy. There are babies everywhere. There's so many young folks on staff who have kids. But the last 4 years under Joe Biden, parents were really stressed and ravaged. They had to take on 2 or 3 extra jobs. Depression rates were up. Suicide rates were up. You're a very high-profile young mother who seems to juggle and balance it all beautifully. What advice do you have to young parents out there who are starting their careers, having kids, building families, and trying to find that balance so desperately?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And first, to the heart of your premise, it's true. The president has empowered not just me as a young mother in this role, but there are so many new moms and dads on our senior staff in the West Wing, but also across the entire administration.
Can't forget the dads. There's one from the first briefing on Monday that we're going to roll. We've got some more information on this influencer. Let's go ahead and play C2 here.
Thank you for having us here. I've noticed, this is kind of like a repeat of 2016, the legacy media has gone back to not reporting anything on President Trump. In the beginning, we had them reporting everything that he was doing. Now they're kind of going back again to not reporting everything that he is actually doing. I'm kind of the nerd when it comes to reporting. I'm not the headline news girl. I'm the nuts and bolts. I'm the policy type nerd. So what direction do you advise kind of me to go into, like the White House files that y'all send out every single day? Because that's what people are used to when they want to ask me questions. They want to know kind of like the nuts and bolts of everything.
Okay, guys, go ahead and react.
Where do we want to start?
That reminds me of Brian Stelter asking Jen Psaki, what can we as the media do better?
Yeah.
And that was ridiculed then. It should be ridiculed now. And look, I think, and Emily, this is the thing. I'm not objecting to everybody in the briefing room. I am friends with a lot of those people. I mean, my man Pomp was there sitting in the background. But my point is not about that. It's actually a philosophical thing where the White House is just, here's my main message to a lot of these influencers. You are being used. They think you're a fucking joke. I just want to be honest with you. Because let's talk about this. Who did Donald Trump choose to give his 100-day interviews to? The Atlantic, Time Magazine, and Terry Moran at ABC News for an Oval Office sit-down. Yeah, they'll invite you to your silly little briefing so you can glaze them about babies or whatever is going on. They don't respect you at all. So even though Trump will sit there and be like, wow, what a great question, Trump understands the optics are humiliating to actually sit down with somebody like you. And the White House does too. You're a pawn. You're a joke. You're somebody there just to take up space and to piss off the media. Now, if you want to actually do your job, you should ask them questions which are critical. And Ryan, I mean, I really think it's important for you to be able to talk about this because you were once in a similar position in the Huffington Post. And what the Huffington Post expertly did under Barack Obama is they challenged Barack Obama from the left And so the mission of conservative media should not be to glaze the Trump administration. It should be to challenge the Trump administration, say, why haven't you done these things that you promised on the campaign trail? Why are you allowing this? Why are you not doing? You should find internal contradictions. And I'm telling you, this is the way that I operated in the White House. And hey, what do I know? I only got to interview the president 4 times in the Oval Office. The reason why I did it is not because I glazed them. In fact, I'll just reveal it privately. They would all say, "Yeah, we can't give this to whoever is glazing us because we would look stupid."
Right.
They're like, when we bring you in, you're actually going to ask them critical questions. They don't want the critical question, but they understand that that's part of the back and forth. So Ryan, I think you should really go off on this a little bit because you had the experience. Oh, sorry, Emily too.
No, I just want to interject to say my entire argument is the point that you're making here is that there actually were questions that didn't go viral from some of these influencers, people I don't even know, who were coming at it from the right. And actually Sean Spicer, of all people, asked Caroline Leavitt why Donald Trump is sitting down with Jeffrey Goldberg and other people in the corporate press, which I meant to post this, but like I do a lot of helping.
I was watching that and I was like, is that Sean Spicer?
Yes.
What the hell is he doing in there?
But this is the thing, like I don't know how many young conservative journalists I've said exactly what you just said, Sagar, to. And I meant to send that from Sean Spicer and be like, he actually understands this. This is the only way that you get respect, is asking serious questions. So there were questions about Trump's promise for national reciprocity for gun owners, a great example of something that nobody in the mainstream media would ask about, holding him to account for a promise from the right that nobody in the corporate press would ask about. Very legitimate question, newsy question. When will the border wall be built? Another great question. That one didn't go viral. There was a question, this was from DC Drano, about the timeline on the Epstein files. There was a question about reorganizations of the IRS. There were some genuinely decent questions that didn't go viral. Now, to everyone's point, I just want to say I agree that those viral moments speak to something really rotten in conservative media, MAGA media. And I'm also very curious to hear Ryan's thoughts on this, because he actually did exactly what you said, Sagar, which is the right way to approach this job, not just for being more successful, but also just doing your damn job and respecting your viewers and your audience. So Ryan, tell us.
Yeah. Sagar has this exactly right. That if you are a journalist with a perspective, whether you guys on the right, me on the left, it's actually easier to do your job when there's a center left. If you're a left-wing journalist and there's a center-left president in power, attacking them from the left is kind of a lot easier to do real interesting work than it is when there's a right-wing president, because it's not interesting that the Huffington Post thinks that Donald Trump is wrong about X, Y, and Z, because they also think he's wrong about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, everything. But when it comes to somebody that you're a little bit closer with, you're able to earnestly say, hey, you ran on breaking up the big banks, and now we're hearing that Larry Summers is saying you can't break up the big banks. You ran on making sure that there is a public option for people who can't afford insurance. We hear that you're talking to Big Pharma about making sure that that's not even in the bill.
Yep.
And finding the gap between what they ran on and what they're actually doing is where the good journalism is. You drive that wedge in there, and you can do it more effectively if you actually care.
And it's your value, right? Because you're filling blind spots. The entire point of that's why I actually the national reciprocity for gun owners question was, I thought, such a good illustration. This is your value in the briefing room, is that you are bringing a perspective that is underrepresented in the media, despite being represented more evenly throughout the rest of the population. Trump voters care about the promise he made on gun reciprocity. They care about the border wall, but their questions aren't represented in the briefing room. So it's not only a value add for you to be tough on some of these questions from the right, it also will be more successful. So if you want to be successful, you're being stupid by being a lapdog.
That's the thing they just don't understand. And again, Trump understands this. That's why he, at the end of the day, is not choosing any of these people to sit down with. And, I just don't know, because I wonder also if it's an audience thing, because there has been so much of a MAGA pill taken by a lot of people who are influencers online, where, because they've created a feedback loop through which all they do is glaze Donald Trump all the time, that they don't even have the space or the trust with their audience to be able to challenge Trump. And so they find it existentially dangerous. I mean, I think it would be fascinating to watch any of these like former free speech warriors go in there and ask about the Palestine thing, right? Because that would throw them off their game too. Here's the other thing too that people need to understand. It's also about mindset. So the mindset of a White House press secretary when they walk into a normal briefing room, it's war. It's literal warfare. They're prepared. They're ready to do battle. But when she's walking in there, let me guarantee you she's not doing the level of preparation that they are whenever they go into the briefing room. That's when things get interesting. That's when things are very interesting, when you can hear what they actually think. I remember once in the first Trump administration, there was this great reporter. I think his name was Olivier Knox. I forget who he worked for at the time. And he was in a back and forth with Spicer.
And Yahoo.
And he was just like, hey, what does victory look like in Afghanistan? And Spicer was like, stable. And I was like, oh, interesting. I was like, he doesn't even know. I was like, what a great question, right? Because it was so fascinating, because he hadn't prepared for it at all. And he hit him with something. And he actually had to think on the spot. It might be one of the few honest moments of his entire career. That's actually one of the best things that you could get. I mean, Ryan, you can talk about this too. Didn't Obama call you guys out specifically in like his first press conference in 2009? And he's like, I could cure cancer. And the Huffington Post would say, I didn't do enough.
It was even better. He said, he said, if the Huffington Post were covering Abraham Lincoln when he did the Emancipation Proclamation, they would have highlighted the fact that it didn't apply to a few counties in West Virginia and to other counties under Confederate control.
I mean, by the way, that's actually fair and true. That is what the Liberator and those people said, just so we're aware, Mr. President.
Yes, and we actually then wrote that article just for him. Because all of the like radical Republican papers at the time said the same thing. Why are you so late on this, and why doesn't this cover everybody? And that's the role of that press. So it's like, yes. And he would call us out. He would call us out pretty regularly, and we ate it up. And what my favorite time was when the New York Times editorialized against Larry Summers for Fed chair, but we had been just absolutely hammering him at the Huffington Post.
You were very pro Larry Summers for Fed chair.
And he did not get it. And in a private meeting with Democrats, Obama complained about us. And Larry Summers, and not the New York Times, because the New York Times editorial page wasn't moving the needle.
See, that's very interesting.
Right. That was what was getting under his craw.
See, and that's power. And that's look. I mean, and none of these people listen.
That's to your point. These influencers think that they're going to get access by asking these glazing questions, when in fact, as you found with Trump, it's being adversarial and building your own authority that then forces them to answer your questions. And otherwise they're totally embarrassed. So it was the power that we built that forced them. They didn't love us, hated us more than they hated the Daily Caller, probably, because they're like, oh, the Daily Caller, of course they're going to beat us up. But God, the Huffington Post.
They don't listen. And Emily, like you said, I have been on the phone with half of these people. They don't listen. They're taking their advice from social media. And I think not only is it going to age poorly, like remember all of the stars of 2017 in the briefing room? April Ryan, Jim Acosta. How did it work out? I mean, these people are jokes. We remember it as a joke. So yeah, they got rich, for a year or for two. Jim Acosta literally got fired from CNN because he's humiliating, as part of his brand. Nobody looks back on his whole like fight, resist. What was the whole like grabbing the microphone away from the intern? It's just like it literally is like mass psychosis, right? That was even considered acceptable. I think that's how most of these MAGA media people are going to look. They won't age. And, look, I mean, will they get away with it? Yeah, they definitely will. I mean, I've been watching to see the reception they get on social media. I think it's insane. I honestly, I don't really understand it.
Well, that's the point that I wanted to make, because I think the distinction between influencers and journalism is quite interesting as well, because to the point you were making about whether this is audience capture, that's really interesting, because I think with some of these influencers, it's not even audience capture. It's that they they want this access that's not about getting journalism, right? Because they're not journalists. So they're not trying to like break stories and move the ball forward. What they want is more access for socials. And that's a very different set of incentives. They want to be able to go with like Kai Trump and Don Jr. and like be behind the scenes at all of these events, because that's just sort of where their bread is buttered right now. They can get maybe sponsorships with it. And it's a different, I agree that it's a different set of incentives than breaking news. And obviously those incentives have crept into journalism itself too. But if you don't even think of yourself as a journalist, it's true that you have important big audiences. So there's theoretically a case for these influencer briefings, but they're not going to be the same as the White House press briefing. Nevertheless, if you have serious questions, then you should ask the serious questions, because it will be better off. You will actually be respected. Your audience will be interested in it because they are following you, in that they think you like are one of their, like they're a fellow conservative, so they probably have the same questions that you do about when the border wall is supposed to be done, despite all of the promises. So, I mean, it's obviously, yes, it's silly. I hope some of these good questions keep getting asked, even if they're not going viral, because this really ties a bow on everything we've just talked about. You don't go viral for asking a good question about gun
Sometimes you do, though.
Yeah, you can.
Actually, sometimes you do. Yeah, that's
right.
That's what these other people don't get. It's like, if you want real fame or like success or any of this stuff, you can get it by doing kind of what you're trying to do. But it's just,
it's harder.
Whatever. It's
harder.
much harder. It takes a level of intellectualism and history and of knowledge, to get there. But, they've chosen their path. And I mean, I think they just look like a joke, and that, 4 years from now, they're not going to be able to even have a career. And from that point forward, like you got to ask existential questions, because look, all the warning signs were there, and they're just feeding into this mass hysteria at the moment. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.